The Titanic was more than just a ship, it was a symbol of human ambition and technological advancement. Commissioned by the White Star Line, it was designed to outshine all previous vessels in size, luxury, and safety. The ship's construction began in 1909 at the prestigious Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Ireland, employing thousands of skilled workers. Engineers and designers spared no expense in making Titanic the pinnacle of maritime innovation, incorporating cutting-edge technology, including a double-bottom hull and watertight compartments that were believed to make it nearly unsinkable. This unwavering confidence in its design would later prove to be a fatal miscalculation. Titanic was a floating palace, stretching an astonishing 882 feet and weighing over 46,000 tons, making it the largest moving object ever built at the time. The ship's interiors were a masterpiece of elegance and extravagance, catering to the elite of society. First-class passengers enjoyed opulent staterooms, adorned with intricate wood carvings, chandeliers, and plush furnishings that rivaled the grandest hotels of the era. The ship featured a grand staircase, a heated swimming pool, Turkish baths, and a lavish dining saloon that could seat hundreds. For entertainment, there was a smoking lounge, a reading room, and a cafe inspired by the finest establishments in Paris, ensuring that passengers traveled in unmatched comfort and style. However, the Titanic was not just a luxury vessel, it was also an engineering marvel. Designed with 16 watertight compartments, it was believed that even if 4 of them flooded, the ship would still stay afloat. This reinforced the widespread belief that the Titanic was unsinkable, a notion heavily promoted by the White Star Line and accepted by the public without question. This perceived invincibility led to critical oversights, including the decision to equip the ship with only 20 lifeboats, enough for barely half of those on board. The confidence in Titanic's unsinkable reputation would later result in devastating consequences when disaster struck. Despite its grandeur, there were warning signs that the Titanic was not as indestructible as many believed. Reports surfaced that during its construction, engineers and shipbuilders were pressured to complete the project on schedule, potentially compromising the quality of materials used. Additionally, some experts speculated that the steel and rivets used in its hull may not have been strong enough to withstand extreme conditions. Yet, these concerns were overshadowed by the excitement surrounding the Titanic's maiden voyage. As the finishing touches were put in place, the world eagerly anticipated the departure of a ship that was meant to redefine ocean travel forever. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic embarked on its maiden voyage from Southampton, England, with great fanfare. The world's largest and most luxurious ship at the time, it carried over 2,200 passengers and crew, each with their own hopes, dreams, and expectations. Among them were some of the wealthiest figures of the era, including John Jacob Astor IV, as well as hundreds of immigrants eager to start new in America. As the ship sailed into the open waters, its passengers marveled at the grandeur of their surroundings: gilded dining halls, opulent staterooms, and sweeping decks designed for leisure and luxury. Every detail of the Titanic's construction was meant to embody progress and human achievement, reinforcing the belief that it was unsinkable. The Titanic's journey took it first to Cherbourg, France, where additional passengers boarded, including notable figures such as Margaret Brown and Benjamin Guggenheim. From there, it continued to Queenstown, Ireland, making its final stop before heading into the vast Atlantic. As it left the Irish coast behind, passengers settled into the rhythms of life aboard the grand vessel. The first-class travelers indulged in lavish feasts and social gatherings, while second- and third-class passengers found their own joys in the ship's many amenities. The voyage was smooth, and spirits remained high as the Titanic pushed forward under the command of Captain Edward Smith, a seasoned sailor nearing retirement. The belief in the ship's strength was unshaken, and the air buzzed with optimism. However, as the Titanic advanced deeper into the North Atlantic, danger lurked beneath the surface. Icebergs had been reported along the route, with multiple warnings coming in from other ships navigating the same treacherous waters. Despite these alerts, the Titanic maintained its full speed of approximately 22 knots, a decision influenced by the desire to make headlines with a record-breaking crossing. The crew, trusting in the ship's advanced design and reinforced hull, saw little reason for concern. Meanwhile, Passengers remained blissfully unaware of the perils ahead, continuing to revel in the splendor of their voyage, unaware that their journey would soon take a tragic turn. The night of April 14, 1912, was bitterly cold, with the ocean stretching out like an endless, black void. The Titanic's lookout, perched high above the decks, scanned the horizon for signs of danger. At 11:40 p.m., a shadowy mass emerged from the darkness, a massive iceberg, dead ahead. The warning bell rang, and frantic orders were issued to alter the ship's course, but it was too late. A shudder rippled through the vessel as the iceberg scraped along its side, tearing into its steel hull. At first, many dismissed the collision as minor, but below deck, water had already begun to pour in. The unthinkable was now reality. The unsinkable ship was doomed. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, the Titanic sliced through the frigid waters of the North Atlantic under a clear, starry sky. The lookout, Frederick Fleet, spotted a towering iceberg emerging from the darkness and frantically rang the warning bell. Officers on the bridge scrambled to alter the ship's course, ordering a hard turn to port while signaling the engines to reverse, but it was too late. The massive vessel, moving at nearly full speed, could not turn quickly enough. A sickening shudder reverberated through the ship as the iceberg scraped along its starboard side, peeling back steel plates like paper. The impact, at first, seemed minor. There was no catastrophic jolt, no immediate signs of disaster. But below deck, the reality was far grimmer. The collision had punctured the hull in 6 separate compartments, far beyond the Titanic's ability to stay afloat. Water gushed in at an unstoppable rate, flooding the lower levels and sealing the fate of those trapped below. In the boiler rooms, engineers fought desperately to control the rising water, but it was a losing battle. Captain Edward Smith, alerted to the damage, rushed to assess the situation. As he conferred with Chief Designer Thomas Andrews, a chilling truth settled over them: the ship was doomed. The unsinkable Titanic had only hours left to remain afloat. Officers began preparing the lifeboats. Though the grim reality soon became clear, there were not nearly enough seats for everyone on board. Above deck, the first hints of panic took hold as passengers, many still unaware of the full extent of the disaster, were roused from their cabins. Crew members urged them to dress warmly and head to the boat deck, though many hesitated, believing the ship was safer than the small lifeboats. The first-class passengers were ushered to the front, while those in third class, many of whom did not speak English, struggled to find their way above deck. The order was given for women and children to board first, but as the minutes passed, the atmosphere grew tense. The realization that more than 1,500 people would be left behind sent waves of fear through the crowd, and the struggle for survival began. As the lifeboats were lowered into the icy sea, the ship's bow dipped ever lower, pulling the Titanic toward its inevitable fate. Some passengers stood in stunned silence, unable to grasp the horror unfolding before them, while others frantically searched for loved ones, refusing to board without their families. Crew members worked to maintain order, but chaos soon erupted as people fought for a place in the remaining boats. Gunshots rang out as officers tried to enforce the evacuation, and the screams of those left behind pierced the cold night air. The Titanic, once a symbol of human triumph, now faced its tragic end, swallowed by the very ocean it was meant to conquer. As the bow of the Titanic dipped deeper into the Atlantic, chaos and despair swept across the decks. The ship's band, led by Wallace Hartley, played a steady stream of hymns and waltzes, a final act of courage meant to soothe the terrified passengers. Some clung to the hope that rescue would arrive in time, while others faced the grim reality of their fate. Women and children were ushered into the remaining lifeboats, but many refused to leave their husbands, fathers, and brothers behind. The lifeboats, meant for salvation, became symbols of unbearable separation. Those left behind watched helplessly as their loved ones drifted away into the darkness, their cries lost to the howling wind and roaring sea. The ship's deck tilted at an increasingly steep angle, making it nearly impossible to stand. Distress rockets exploded in the night sky, illuminating the horror below, but no ship was close enough to come to the rescue. Inside, furniture and debris tumbled through the corridors as passengers and crew scrambled for any chance of survival. The stern lifted high above the water, exposing the massive propellers as the ship groaned under immense pressure. In its final moments, the Titanic was a scene of unimaginable terror. Some clung to the railings, others leapt into the freezing sea, and many simply prayed, resigned to their fate. The lights flickered once, then vanished, plunging the ship into total darkness. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic could no longer withstand the forces tearing it apart. A thunderous crack echoed through the night as the ship split in two. The bow plunged beneath the waves, dragging hundreds with it, while the stern lingered briefly before rising one last time and sinking into the abyss. In a matter of moments, the mighty Titanic was gone. Over 1,500 souls were swallowed by the ocean, their voices silenced in the icy void. Those who remained afloat in the water fought against the bitter cold, their bodies succumbing within minutes to hypothermia. Lifeboats, only partially filled, drifted nearby, but most survivors hesitated to return for fear of being swamped by the desperate. When dawn broke, all that remained was an eerie silence. The once grand ship was now a legend buried beneath 2 miles of water, its wreckage scattered across the ocean floor. The survivors, huddled together in lifeboats, watched the horizon for any sign of salvation. Hours later, the RMS Carpathia arrived, pulling the exhausted and grief-stricken from the sea. The world would wake to the news of a tragedy beyond comprehension. The Titanic, once hailed as unsinkable, had become a haunting memory, a ghost resting in the silent depths below. The world awoke to a tragedy of unimaginable scale as news of the Titanic's sinking spread across newspapers and telegraphs. Families anxiously awaited word of their loved ones, clinging to hope that they had somehow survived. The RMS Carpathia, arriving at the disaster site hours too late to save anyone still in the water, rescued the 706 survivors who had managed to escape in lifeboats. The ship made its way to New York, where grief-stricken crowds gathered at the docks, desperate for answers. Survivors, many in shock, recounted the horrors of that fateful night, painting a picture of chaos, loss, and heartbreak. The sheer magnitude of the disaster left the world in mourning, with mass funerals held for victims across multiple nations. Outrage quickly followed grief as the public demanded to know how such a catastrophe had occurred. Investigations on both sides of the Atlantic, the U.S. Senate inquiry and the British Wreck Commission, uncovered a series of grave failures. The lack of lifeboats, the ship's excessive speed despite iceberg warnings, and the delayed response from nearby vessels all pointed to negligence. The once praised belief in the Titanic's invincibility now seemed reckless, a fatal error in judgment. In response, sweeping changes to maritime safety laws were introduced. The International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea (SOLAS) was established, ensuring that ships carried enough lifeboats for all passengers and maintained a 24-hour radio watch. These reforms reshaped the future of ocean travel, ensuring that no tragedy of this scale would happen again. For decades, the Titanic remained lost beneath the waves, its exact resting place unknown. Many believed the ship had been swallowed by the sea forever, a ghostly legend whispered through the years. Then, in 1985, oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard and his team made a groundbreaking discovery. They found the Titanic, lying over 2 miles deep on the ocean floor. The wreckage, eerily preserved in the cold darkness, revealed haunting remnants of the once great ship, rusted railings, shattered decks, and personal belongings left behind in the rush to escape. The discovery reignited worldwide fascination with the Titanic, inspiring books, documentaries, and films that kept the story alive for new generations. More than a century after the disaster, the Titanic remains one of history's most enduring tragedies, a symbol of human ambition and the relentless power of nature. The ship, once celebrated as the pinnacle of luxury and innovation, now serves as a stark reminder of the cost of overconfidence. Each year, memorials and exhibitions honor those who perished, ensuring their stories are never forgotten. As technology advances, new explorations of the wreck continue, offering deeper insights into its final moments. Yet, despite all that has been learned, the Titanic's legacy endures as a haunting testament to the fragility of human achievement in the face of the vast, unforgiving sea. Thanks for tuning into the past. Don't forget to subscribe and join me for more stories that shaped our world.